welcome back to episode number 18. How you guys doing?
Let's go. Inspired.
Happy Friday. I just want to say a quick shout out to everyone who's given us such amazing feedback about episode 17 about does money control you or do we control your own money? So thank you everyone for listening. Thank you for tagging us in the stories, and thank you for also sharing it with your friends. It's a way that we're growing every week. Now, of course, if you like us, if you support the stories, the episodes, the lessons, please continue to tag us in your Instagram story. We don't have any marketing budget. We're not promoting it any other way. It's just purely word of mouth. So thanks a lot for that. And let's get ready for episode 18.
And thanks for those that have already started to work on their personal finance, downloading apps and a few workbooks. So looking good.
And actually, just building on that, any stories that you've had already of changes that you've seen or any observations, would be great if you could share it with us as well. So, yeah.
Great. So you're here with myself, Olu, Pebilo, Shuwal, and Daniel. On this week's episode, following up from last week around personal finance, some of the viewers and listeners wanted to hear about side hustles. So how do we generate other sources of income? So in this week, we're going to talk about side hustles. We're going to break it down, what it means to each one of us. And then we're going to go to the book review, which will be taken by me. So stay tuned and let's get started.
Take off, take flight with you. For we never fly, but we're flying.
So what does side hustle mean? What is side hustle? What's the definition before we sort of start getting into the topic?
So who wants to shoot the shot first? I think P, you should go for this because you got a lot going on the side, bro.
But you know what's interesting for me actually when I was thinking about this topic, it actually goes beyond just trying to generate income on the side. For me, when I think of side hustles, I think about developing an array of different skills. So the line which stuck with me, I think a few years ago, was sort of build your skills, not your CV. So it's this concept of when we're in our sort of 20s, we should be trying to have like a flurry of activities just to sort of find ourselves, experiment and see what works. Because you actually find that you can actually it's quite fulfilling trying different things and seeing what you perhaps like beyond your day job. So I think it's a lot more than just starting something just to try and generate some income. It's really about the skill set that you can actually build along the way.
I think I agree with you, P there. I think the normal and traditional definition for side hustle is basically whenever you have you undertake any additional job to generate income apart from your main source of income. So for myself, I'm a finance manager. So that's my main source of income. So any projects or things that work outside of that area to generate income will be classed as a side hustle for me.
Yeah, no, of course. No, I definitely agree with that. But what I was kind of getting the point across, which was when I look at it, it goes beyond. Like for example, if you just focus on the income, your side hustle may only be very short lived.
Correct.
So what I'm saying is, if people go into it saying, okay, I should actually look to start things on the side in parallel of my day job or in parallel of my business, and I'm doing it to build my skill set, it becomes a much more, you take the approach, I think, which is much more positive towards quote unquote side hustle, right? It's like an experimental approach. It's no longer about whether you succeed or fail. It's just about doing something outside of your day job. So that for me is kind of, in my obviously experiences as well, helps you to get through, because it can be very difficult. We can get into it doing something in parallel of your job.
I guess it goes to motivation. Like, what's your motivation for it? And I think, Shuwal, you can jump in, like, because depending on what your motivation is, will decide if you're only doing it to generate some quick cash or some cash, or if you're doing it to gain skills or look at a long-term vision or goal.
And I think just building on what P's saying, I think sometimes when people are assessing what a side hustle is, or actually this is an idea that I have, should I start to work on it a little bit, a few hours after work, because it's not generating a lot of money in the first month or first 6 months or even the first year or 2 years. People look at the associated income that isn't coming with it and they decide to drop it off. Like a prime example could be this podcast that we're doing, right? We're on episode 18 now. We haven't generated any income from it yet, and maybe we may not for another few months, maybe another year or whatever. But during this process of doing this side hustle, we're learning, we're growing, and we're developing a skill set that will hopefully bring us opportunities either through this vehicle or another way sometime in the future. So I think it's important, as you were saying, Olu, that with a side hustle, it's important to know what the objective is at the beginning, but it doesn't necessarily always have to be income related at the beginning. And I think as long as you're open-minded to that and you can see all the other benefits, then you'll hopefully have bigger opportunities further down the line.
Mm-mm.
But that is obviously one avenue of side hustles. There's many other things that we're all doing on the side that will generate money as well. But I think that's an important aspect that P's saying, that don't get too attached on the price of the side hustle and the income of the side hustle too early, because it may close certain doors later on that you're not even aware of at that stage.
Yeah, and it's also for me, like, side hustles are a great way to discover about yourself. What else is out there? What else can you do? You find yourself tapping into areas that you realize, perhaps, all right, I'm actually quite good at this. And so if you decided not to tackle a side hustle and just stick to your sort of regular day job or your business, it's a missed opportunity. The other thing for me, which for side hustle, is that it's a great way to fill the unused space that we have in our days. So we all sort of waste time, generally speaking. And if you add, one or two things in addition to your day job, you become overall more productive. And the other sort of line that stuck with me as well, it says the biggest tax is not necessarily the one you see on your paycheck. It's actually being idle. So side hustles keep you going, and it can also serve as a great downtime as well.
So Daniel, if you jump in, do you feel like everyone needs or should have a side hustle, and do you need to be like an entrepreneur to have a side hustle? Because I think these are some of the myths that we hear when we think about side hustles. Oh, am I skilled enough to have a side hustle on this?
I don't think everyone needs a side hustle. It depends on yourself as a person. I see as a side hustle as something that you enjoy doing rather than doing it for monetary value. But it should be something you do because you have a passion for it. Whether it be a podcast, I wouldn't say, for example, this podcast, we didn't start it because we want to generate money, and that is not even that's not our prime reason why we started it. If it comes, it comes. But the main reason was for us to learn from each other and just to share content, and that was the premise of it. So anything that you want to necessarily say make a inverted commas side hustle, it should be something you first enjoy, because if not, it's soon going to diminish and just go back to what it started into dust.
So what you said there is, I agree with everything you said, but then I would turn around and say then everyone should have a side hustle.
Yeah, I'm on that side of the argument.
I think everyone should have it.
And
if you're doing something,
everyone should have one.
If you're doing some, if you're doing something, for example, your day job, if it's not something you enjoy, then maybe you should have a side hustle. But if your day job is something you really, really do enjoy, you're doing something you love already.
But even if you love your day job,
maybe you could take that avenue and do something similar on the side and build on that. But I wouldn't say you have to be an entrepreneur to have a side hustle. You don't have to be business savvy to have a side hustle. You just need to get started and do what you enjoy.
Even if you enjoy your job, I think, yes, you should definitely have something on the side. Yes, you might not generate money. Yes, you shouldn't go with the intention of, okay, let me do. But I believe outside of your normal day job, you can gain some sort of skill. You can go into a different area. There's so much that the world has to offer. And I think you see with certain people who reinvent themselves so many times, where they don't stay in a box where they're like, oh, I'm an artist. On the side, they'll maybe go into acting, or like they go into so many different areas. And I feel like as humans, we should never go through our life and just be like, okay, I did one thing for all my life. I was able to do multiple different sides, because you might find out based on that exposure that, oh, you know what, I enjoy this more than what I'm doing right now, or I can go into this field later on. So I personally, I think everyone should have side hustles. Yes.
I think Gary Vee, I think it's Gary Vee that talks about it, which is we should spend our 20s trying to do as much as we can to figure out what actually is going to for us. And so I look at sort of society today. If I also look at, and I think it just seems to be now a way of living. People have one or two things going on outside of their regular day job or what you know them for to really what they earn money for. But I was just actually thinking, sure, when we've interviewed people for roles or even internships, what stands out for me are those that are actually doing a number of different things outside of coming from university or outside of their actual weekend day job. So it actually makes you even more of an interesting person. It gives you a lot more to talk about when you find yourself networking in sort of social groups.
You know why that's so funny?
It's the number.
The reason I got my graduate job wasn't because of my university grade, it was because at that time I had started a business called Everything Uni, if you guys remember university, which was supposed to compete with like eBay. It was supposed to be the university version of eBay. I spent the job interview not talking about my qualifications, we spent the interview just talking about my business plan, where I saw some of the activities, what I've generated, and I was able to get the job. That's what side hustles is all about. You can gain skills that can be transferable and go into multiple different fields.
Yeah, totally agree.
I think also just building on that, nowadays, this generation that I think we're part of, and if I think about my younger brother and stuff, if getting jobs and everything is becoming a lot more competitive. So to really stand out, you need to have these additional things going on the side. And I think for me personally, it helps me. Pabila mentioned at the beginning, you become a lot more productive with your time, a lot more disciplined. So I think it shows that skill, but also it really allows creativity to flow. Now, I'm nothing against big companies, because we've had great opportunities to work within big companies and travel and see the world at the same time. But your level of creativity that you're allowed to express in your role can be quite limited in these big kind of machines that we're working in. So having these side hustles also allows the creativity to flow in different areas. And that's a muscle that we need to really keep working at, especially while we're young and in our 20s like we are, because if you stop using your creativity after a few months and years, then that starts to become very, very low. So it's important to keep a focus on that. And just building on your point, actually, about being multi-disciplinary, etc. This is why I love. I mean, you can argue if he's the best person or not, but some people like Kanye West or Virgil Abloh, who started off in a particular field, be it in music or art, etc., and now you see them in Kanye West, for example, designing clothes, buying buildings. Virgil Abloh started off as an architect, who's now a creative director for Louis Vuitton, and you see him traveling all around the world as a DJ. Now, I find that very inspiring for our generation, and I think that shows that at the highest level in those particular industries, you can do things in 2, 3, 4 different areas and still do it at very, very high level. So why everyone can't do that, I don't see an answer.
Expanding on what Shoel mentioned about in this day and age, I remember listening to an audiobook by many years ago, maybe about 12 years ago, by Brian Tracy. It's called The Psychology of Success. And he was talking about how we work so many hours, say like a 9-to-5 job. You're doing 40 hours a week, but after that, you're not doing any productivity in your own life. And you're basically wasting time. So he's even talking about saying if you do 2 extra hours, say on a project yourself a day, multiply that by 5 days per week, that's 10 hours extra a week you're doing on your own personal development, on your own actual life, rather than just adding value to another person's company. And you multiply that 10 hours per week by 50 weeks in a year, that will give you 500 hours of productivity each year.
It's a lot.
500 hours translates into more than 12 40-hour weeks, which is an equivalent of 3 extra months of productive work in each year. So if you even just take 2 hours per day, 5 days a week, compounding that onto your working day, you can be a lot more productive and in what you're doing, or creating an area for you to, enjoy yourself, learn new skills. Because we're talking about side hustles now, but even those 2 hours could be even translated into reading or picking up a language or whatever your passion is. It could be just any 2 hours on something could have an astronomical effect on the trajectory of that development area.
So, like, what are some of the myths you hear about side hustles? So, do you need a lot of money to start? What are you guys' views on that? And let's throw out some of the myths that you hear about side hustles.
One of the big ones, obviously, you think about does it cost money to start, but also, do I have enough time to start it? And I think people always think, I don't have enough time. I come back from work and I'm tired, or there's not enough time in the morning because I'm commuting. There's various reasons you can come up with. Also on the weekend, things are coming up. But if you really, 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 really want to do something, you'll naturally make and find the time for it. And even as Daniel was saying, if it's 1 or 2 hours a day, you heard how that compounded over a year, how much of an impact that can make. So I think just going back to your question, Olu, I think time is one of those myths that people think they don't have. But if you really assess your day and how much time that you're allocating for other activities, then you can always find an hour or two a day. And you heard from Daniel how much impact it can have.
So there's the time. I guess there's the money aspect. Is there which, yes, you don't need a lot of money to get started. Even us doing this podcast, we haven't spent much money on it. We use apps like Skype, Zencast to record. Is not expensive.
No, I think for most hustles to get started, the barriers to entry are very low. So I think to get started, you don't need a lot of capital. When you're looking to scale at a certain stage, then of course. But there's no excuse for any of us to actually start different things or to say money is actually an issue. Because you'll find, like you mentioned, a number of free apps or a number of free trials, and then it's only maybe £10 a month and these kind of things. So it's capital.
What about skill? Because that's one that you hear quite a lot. I'm not knowledgeable about this particular field. Like, for example, when we started this podcast, how much did you guys know about recording?
I think that's just. I think anything that you try and say to stop yourself from starting a side hustle is just an excuse.
Yeah, exactly.
It's just an excuse because 100%. There are many resources out there for you to find available and relevant information for whatever maybe you're trying to do. Because whatever you're doing, you're not the first person in the world.
What are some of those sources that you use to find that knowledge?
By speaking to people,
so
using the internet.
YouTube, I guess. I use YouTube quite a lot.
There are many.
Instagram, Twitter, you can DM people who you can see that are doing something similar in the space that you want. Honestly, network, we've spoken about it in previous episodes. If you connect with the right people, that can honestly unlock so much for these side hustles. And I mean, I've seen it firsthand for myself. It can open up so much more understanding and can speed up the progress as well. So,
I think to Olu, to your question, YouTube is the biggest number one source to learning about. You realize very quickly, like you said, someone said it, you're not the first person to start it. There's so many videos of somebody already working on what you're doing in another country, in the US or Canada. So you're like, I don't find that anybody's alone in doing this. It's just a matter of how motivated and, Dan, you said it, passionate you are about wanting to not only start but continue, stay consistent. So I think the consistency is probably the biggest challenge with side hustles. Because there's actually nobody, unless you create a network and you do it with other people. I think one of the reasons why we are going to last as a podcast is because it's a 4. Whereas if we was perhaps a 2 or just a 1 sharing ideas, it's a lot more difficult to actually continue to
like
push
you can even talk about this episode. Like we recorded this episode on Thursday morning. I think if it was one of us doing it, we probably wouldn't record it, or 2, maybe we wouldn't record it. But the fact that you have 4 people, you got 3 other people holding you accountable, saying.
And just to emphasize Olu's point, this is Thursday AM, but we started recording at 5:15 AM. So it's very, very, very early.
Especially after Arsenal's defeat, which is painful. It's painful, but don't get me started. Don't get me started on.
The other myth is perhaps around risk of burnout, and I actually find that, like I said, most of us, we actually have a lot of wasted time during the day. So you're trying to fill out that unused space, and you probably realize that actually the hustle is actually quite a nice downtime. So somebody listening to it now would think, well, I'm working all the way around the clock. Like, when do I have time to relax? That hustle could be your offering to relax. So I don't think necessarily the burnout is something which
So how do you avoid that burnout? Because that's a good concern to have, or a fair concern to have, in terms of, okay, I'm working maybe 9 to 5, 9 to 6, whatever time, and then now I'm gonna be given, like we mentioned, maybe 2 hours a week, and then I've got family commitments, other commitments. How do you avoid that burnout in that area?
Yeah, I think it's like I think there's an element of first accepting that it's a side hustle. I'll tell you why I say that in that way, because many of us want it to become the main hustle. So we're trying to basically push as hard as we can, maybe perhaps do so much at the front end or in the beginning, because we want to turn this into our main thing, and then that can be now something that we do. This is what we do on a 9 to 5 basis. And I think, like, first of all, when you accept that it's a side hustle, you then do it in bite size to begin with. So just spending, for example, if you say, okay, let me just start with 1 or 2 hours a day, you're probably going to realize in the beginning it's not enough time. I want to do more. But if I find if you can plan it just to do sort of 2 hours a day, maybe 2 hours in the morning, hour in the evening, and you're planning your agenda very well, I think that can certainly avoid the risk of burnout, because then you're putting in your breaks, you're putting in your time to go to the gym. So I think it's just about more planning.
Actually, just building on that point, for me, one thing is, and I think we can use a tangible example as this podcast, is if you have a side hustle and you're interested in moving in a certain direction, you don't necessarily have to do it on your own. And normally a task shared is a task halved typically. So you can save a lot of time. Now, we as a four have done this podcast, and we've split the work between the four of us, and I think that's allowed us to accelerate and stay consistent as well. So if you're getting burnt out because you feel like you're doing too much, maybe there's someone around you who has a similar idea, and you can have a discussion with them, and you trust them enough to know that if you were able to work together, you can move forward a lot faster as well. So probably another way to avoid it is see if you can find other like-minded people who want to go down a similar path, and it normally accelerates everything. So yeah,
I'd actually say that your ability to succeed in the first stage is actually based on the power of others. So in my experience, is trying to do it alone. You have to be extremely self-motivated to be consistent and to keep going even when you're not seeing results. And so if you can actually, I honestly believe now we've experienced this. We've all done something ourselves, and we're doing this as a group. I would actually recommend people to actually see if they can build a side hustle with someone else, because that actually is also more enjoyable. And two, I think there's greater chances of it.
Why do you feel like, and maybe this is something I've seen and you guys might not agree with this, but do you find with minorities, quote unquote, we don't really like to do projects or side hustles together? Have you guys seen that? Or
it's funny. It's funny you even say that, because I was going to say we don't even support.
Do you see that? Or
we don't even support each other. Yeah, I do.
You're tapping into layers that we haven't got enough time.
I think this is something we need to discuss, because
we could probably do a whole episode on that.
But long and short of it, we don't. It's not done, and it's not even just this day and age. It's just something that's gone back many decades,
I think
centuries.
we'll park it this time, but I think this is going to be definitely a topic that we need to pick up on, why minorities don't really either support as much as we should, or even do side hustles or projects together. But
Just lastly on another a myth associated with side hustle is people don't necessarily know how it ends. Many people want like a master plan. They want to know how it's going to be for the next 7, 10, or next 3 years, 4 years, 5 years. They want a huge plan before they even get started. But sometimes it's just about getting started and then working out along the way. Because if you never take the first step, you're never going to take the first step.
Daniel, that's perfect. So that moves us like to the next area. Like, how do you get started? So let's now get more personal and talk about how you guys got started on your first hustle. What are some of the side hustles that you guys have? So how do you guys get started? Or do any of you have any side hustles, or are you just preaching about side hustles and none of you got side hustles? Which one?
Go. Kick it off.
So I can. So okay, I think the podcast is one, which I think we spoke about. I mean, in terms of how to start that. So how did we start it? We started it by having similar conversations, probably as subgroups between the four of us. And then we had just a couple of conversations together to speak very high level about the concept, the idea. And before we could get into it too much, we just started recording. And then after recording, it took maybe a month or two, but we started to distribute it. So I think the key steps in that sense to start this one is one, just to find like-minded people who have a similar idea as what we've just spoke about. Two, have an overall concept in mind. You don't necessarily need to have an income goal or anything like that, but just have an overall idea aligned between you and whoever else is doing it. And three, just start. It doesn't need to. I think people want to start and be flying out the blocks with high quality and overthinking everything, which is fine, but that can hinder people from just starting in the first place, and that's the most important part. So that's an example, I think, of one side hustle that we've all participated in. That has hopefully, I mean, I've really enjoyed it. I know we have enjoyed it as a collective as well. So
And to hear more, listen back to episode 12 if you haven't already.
Great shout out.
Daniel's the one person that remembers all the episodes and the topics. Do you guys get it when someone says to you, "Oh yeah, I really loved episode 8 when you guys were talking about social," and I'm like, "Oh, that was episode 8." It's a blur. It's a blur.
Yeah. It's because because Daniel's doing all the text with all our media posts, both.
Now you're making excuses for yourself.
Nah, I know.
Making excuses because
the way I started, or my first, I would say, side hustle was when I was, I think it was 16. So I went just really to the traditional buying and selling. So buying and selling sweets. No. So mine was lamps. Lamps in IKEA. So I've got Amazon, or I've got an Amazon account, so a seller's account. So you can go into Amazon, create a seller's account. This is a side hustle you can call that you're gonna need a little bit of cash to start. But I was in IKEA at the time with my mum, and I saw a bunch of lamps on sale for like £4. So they were doing these sales for £4. I was like, yo, these lamps is dirt cheap, because they were doing a clearance sale. I could easily sell this online for £10. Like, I've already easily doubled the amount I paid. So I basically bought, I think it was around 30 or 40 lamps at the time, and I stuck it in my mom's car and took it home. It was so funny. It was so peak because
I would have loved to have seen a vlog of you just stuff.
The reason why it's so peak is because I got to the till, and the woman was like, "Oh, we only sell 10 per customer." So I'm like, "Okay, cool. Yeah, let me buy 10. Put in the car. Came back, went to another till, bought another 10. Put in the car, went to another till, got another, and then I went online on Amazon and I put it online for £10, or it was like £10, and then I did like £3 delivery, like from Hermes or whatever. So it wasn't like crazy amount of money in terms of, I didn't end up making 1,000 or whatever, but I ended up generating a good amount of profit, which I was able to then use and spend however I wanted. So that was my first sort of hustle, which was back to sort of the basic, finding a product that you can buy cheap, and then looking on Amazon or eBay, seeing what price it is there, and then selling it online.
Yeah, for me, the start of my side hustles came from wanting to solve a problem. So I found myself in the role before that, traveling quite a lot. So every 3 weeks I was on the road traveling, and I said to myself, I'm losing time on wanting to start a business because I'm everywhere. I'm all over Europe. So I said, how can I start something and still manage it whilst I travel? So then I just basically started looking at online-based businesses. So first looked into affiliate marketing, started doing that, playing around, then moved into
affiliate marketing mean?
And then eventually. So affiliate marketing is basically where you're marketing a product on someone else's behalf, and then when the sale is generated, you earn a commission from that sale. And then moved into email marketing, which also can be another form of affiliate marketing, but it's of course in the word email based. And then stuck with, and then transitioned in and then moved into e-commerce, dropshipping products around the world. So it was, it's tough. It's that's why I was talking about the learning here. Doing something in a group, I think, is a lot more advantageous and would be recommended. But that was it for me, solving a problem. And when I started to focus more on building the skill set, which is marketing online as opposed to the income and how much it was generating, then actually I've sort of realized more success.
And last by no means least, myself. Mine just comes from my traveling and having fun, of taking photos, doing video editing, and so on and so forth, being asked to do it at other places. But I never expected to be asked to go and take photos at events and functions. It was just something I just enjoyed doing myself and just appreciating photography. And that's one thing. Also, of course, you've all heard me about my drinking and etc. etc.
I'm drinking red.
Sounds like you had a couple.
No. You don't want to hear my story of yesterday. I spent the whole day traveling because my flight got cancelled. I was up from 5 a.m. yesterday morning for a 10 a.m. flight. Got cancelled. I was in the airport all day, and I got home after 9 o'clock yesterday. So it's just a whole day of traveling and then an early wake up. It's just it wasn't nice. But anyway,
share with the listeners your number one side hustle. Come on, man. It's not.
What?
It's not the cooking with DJ. It's not the.
What is it?
Come on, man. Share with.
What is it? What is it?
Share with them.
Tell me. What is it?
Sky, baby.
Huh?
How you working with Sky for the interview?
Oh. Yeah, we'll keep that for another story. But yeah, so the drinking. So even it sounds like I'm just a drinker. Okay, making drinks and making cocktails, and then being asked to do that at various events and functions. And to be honest, it was the first one I did was very, very. It's tough because when you're doing the comfort of your home, you're doing it for yourself or maybe 4 or 5 guests or whatever it may be. But then I remember at Christmas, we had a games night. There were about 20 people. I was in the kitchen from 3 p.m. to 11:30 p.m. nonstop, making drinks, making food, doing this and that and the other. But it was good fun. But you just learn how, demanding it is, how time consuming it is. And because I've got so much care for attention and detail, sometimes you don't want other people to help because you want to provide a service that is of your quality and to a high standard each time. But yeah, it just mine have all stemmed from things I've enjoyed doing.
So you spent time where there was no income, there was no money there, and building and owning it like on your skill until the time where you gained that skill, and then people started to recognize it and say, okay, this is something that I would actually pay for. Similar to P, I'm not sure if you ever did it, but I spent a lot of my life playing football. So playing football. So then naturally,
I've seen a few clips. Still got that touch though.
I still got it.
Not sure about the finish,
but then naturally after that, I started coaching. So I did some of the coaching qualifications, and I'll say sometimes with your side hustles, try to see if you can get some sort of qualifications with it. So try and see because then you find out, and I'm still even doing it now with qualifications that I got 10 years ago. You can then start coaching, and similar to like freelancing your skills, find people, kids to coach and get paid for that particular time that you're spending.
I'd even add, whether you're making money or not, invest in yourself, invest in what you're doing, because you never know, one day you might need the resources or tools or anything it may be. Some people don't want to spend a penny, but they want to make money. Okay, that might be smart or good, but sometimes you need to spend money to make money. I, in the house, have bought, I don't know how many glasses now. And every time I go out, I seem to buy glasses. So I've got maybe 4 cabinets full of glasses. And people, and I've got another cabinet full of just drinks. And you probably think I'm an alcoholic if you came, but that's because the recent one I bought were martini glasses, because I thought, okay, I want to start making some martinis, so I bought some martini glasses. But it's getting to a point where I'm running out of space for my glasses. But do you know what? I'm not bothered because they will serve a purpose at the right time. And going a step further, I'm now going to buy a bath to put outside.
We're coming through to yours.
Yeah.
We need to record an episode.
I'm on my team.
What is the most, because I think we talked about different side hustles, what's your most lucrative side hustle? Not pocket watching, but what is your most lucrative side hustle? So if people want to just do it for financial gain,
or let's say has the potential to be the most lucrative.
Both. You could do both. So yeah.
I would, but for example, for me, if I think about the side hustles that I've done that are generating incomes for me, then probably investing in real estate. I mean, you can classify that as investing or as a side hustle. I don't know which category you want to put it in.
Side hustle.
Probably it goes in both.
No, it's a side hustle. It's a side
But
hustle.
that's something that I mean, I started off very locally, finding properties around where I grew up to invest in, and now over the years, getting more knowledge, getting more experience, getting plugged in with the right network, having the right mentors in place. Now I'm exploring a lot more lucrative opportunities around the UK as well, and this is something which is being managed on top of my day job. So for me, that's probably the most lucrative in terms of financial gain. Probably the most benefiting for me, non-financial, has been Pupils to Professionals, which I think I've mentioned before in previous podcasts, which is an initiative of giving students opportunities and work experience opportunities that they wouldn't typically get access for. This one hasn't been the most lucrative financially. It's probably cost me money because I've had to put money in to pay for the students' travel expenses. But as an enriching experience for myself and what's been good for me and to see and help people, that's probably been the most lucrative in that sense as well.
Yeah, sure. I don't want to repeat you, but yeah, for me, the most lucrative one has been for sure property.
I mean, the statistics I think is around 90% of millionaires is actually coming through real estate. So I think for all of us, that would be property.
Have you heard about the social media real estate?
Sorry?
Have you heard about the social media real estate? It's where you can. I think I saw it yesterday advertised.
No, I'm talking about.
No, I know you're talking about real estate, like property real estate. But I'm just asking, have you heard about social media? I heard it for the first time yesterday, and it's about, say, having an Instagram page with 10,000 followers, and then someone can buy that page with an automatic reach of 10,000.
Yeah. How much are they offering?
I think bid inside of 1,500.
All right, cool.
But yeah, that was a new concept to me, and whether people think it's stupid or not, I actually think it might be something that takes off because of the day and age we live in.
People will pay for that if they can have access to a page already, access to that number of people. People will pay.
Let's give one quick advice to the listeners on side hustles.
I can start this one. 3 words: just do it. If you have an idea, if you have anything that you want to kick off, think about it a little bit at the beginning, but just start moving through the process, because once you start moving through the process, everything will continue to expand. So just do it.
Yeah, for me, it's more than just money. It's about building skill sets, and it actually will make you even a more interesting person.
Yeah,
I'll say in the famous words of Jim Rohn, if you really want to do it, you'll find a way. If you don't, you'll find an excuse.
I'm gonna steal that for Instagram.
Mine is, before you start, truly understand your motivation. So depending on your motivation, that's going to decide what side hustle you're going to sort of navigate through. And if it's a bigger side hustle, find a partner. So find a partner that's going to allow you to drive consistency, reduce the workload, and just keep you motivated and accountable.
Yeah, the thing is, I agree with you, Olu, but the truth is that everybody's going to hit the roadblock. And the question is, what your motivation? It says something like, motivation is what gets you started. Habits is what keeps you going. There's something along the lines of, it's about this, because everybody's hyped to motivate in the beginning. But what's going to happen
especially you sometimes, Pete.
as you're 3-4 months in, then that's the real question. Are you still motivated? So, I think actually it will be great for another episode is, how do we keep ourselves motivated, and do we actually believe motivation works?
No, for sure.
I'll save my quote for that episode. Then I got another quote.
Mr. Quotes. Okay, so let's move on to the next section, the book review section, which will be taken by myself truly. So this week, the book that I wanted to go into is the 48 Law of Power by Robert Greene. Do you guys know this book? You read the book?
No.
Okay.
Is it by I swear it says 50 Cent's got something called the 50th Law. Is that 50?
Yes, he basically made
he copied the first 4, and added 2.
Yeah. He basically made a hood version for the streets. So I'm guessing you read that version.
No, I haven't. I just my brother, I haven't. Okay, no, I haven't. I know about it, but I haven't read it.
So, and the book really focuses on really saying, looking at people and how people want power, watch power, and how they protect themselves from power. So, um, P, you mentioned 50 Cent. I think watching 50 Cent and knowing 50 Cent and his personality, his character, and how he how
Hustle
he
and ambition,
conducts
baby. Hustle and
business
ambition.
and his ambition, you're gravitated to a book like this around power. Um, and the power really tries to break it down to, not all human beings are logical, and um, and we all have an animal nature to us. So that's what the book is really focusing on, is everyone's got a sort of animal nature and everyone wants power. So when you guys hear the word power, do you see that as, and I think the Western society or society has got us to think that wanting power is a negative thing and you should feel guilty about it. How do you guys think about power? Do you want power? Do you have power? Like, what's your views on power?
What's interesting. What comes to mind is
The show. What, the TV show?
no, not TV. No. By the way, I can't wait for that to drop. But no, what comes to mind is myself and Michael. Michael, who used to work in Reddit.
Right.
I remember him saying, he said something along the lines of, he says, I don't want, the income is the salary is whatever it is. I want power. So what he's basically saying is that, like, the top executives eventually get to the point where you've earned enough, and what you're basically striving for is to have that level of power.
Do you see it as a negative?
Yeah,
I spend my time thinking about, like, having power, because is it a negative?
For me personally, it's like when people are striving to have kind of like influence, or when people are saying, "Yeah, I really want to lead an organization because I'll be able to lead over people." For me, that doesn't necessarily sit right. It feels weird to think like that. I think naturally, if you try to, I think Kabila mentioned it a few episodes ago, I think we're shifting to a more servant leadership model anyway. And I feel like for me, the leaders or the people that are higher than me in whichever category, the ones I aspire towards are the ones that are more of a servant leadership. So flipping that model of, instead of trying to influence people from the top to down, you're really there to help them and help people become a better version of themselves. And that's what I personally feel that I can aspire to. So trying to work towards this power, for me, just maybe, unless I don't get the concept properly, to me it just doesn't feel right to work towards that.
But
I can't say that I think about assuming or having power, working on my power.
I think it's, and that's because society has made power seem such a negative. Power could be just the way you influence other people.
it depends.
And how you're able to control your life. No one likes it if they say, "Hey guys, I want to start a podcast," and everyone's like, "Oh, shut up, sure." Like, like that's this element of power by being able to say something and being able to be
People listening.
and people listening.
Yeah.
Okay, but the question is, how does that book define power?
But before you do that, there are different types of power.
Yeah,
that's the thing you need to distinguish, because there's like coercive power, there's reward power, legitimate power, referent power, and I think there's another one like expert power. So there are different types of power for us to really, until we define which one we're talking about. Michael might be talking about a certain coercive power rather than a reward power or an expert power.
And the book breaks up into, just like Daniel said, there's multiple types of power. So the book is not saying that, okay, I want you to have the archaic way of power and like kill everything around you. Like you're like, it's not that. There's element of it, yes, that is that extreme, but that's how life is. There are people with that sort of mentality. So people with that mentality, by reading this book, you understand how they think. So then you can make strategies and plays against it. You have to see it as a game. And this is what the book tries to say, is like, see it as a game. You can go around the world and say power does not exist. I don't want any power. Doesn't mean someone with power is not going to control you. So it's just being aware of it. And I like the way the book is sort of structured. It really starts with, it's got 48 laws, and we're not going to go through each laws. I'm going to pick some of the key ones that we could talk about it. But it says, it names a law. It then goes into the definition of the law. then it gives examples of people that followed the law and people that didn't follow the law and what the consequences of that was. And then it'll go into like quotes. But before we get into the law and the book even starts, it says something which is so true and I agree with, is before you can start playing this or going looking for power, you need to be able to control your emotions. Like, if you're not someone that can control your emotions, you can't play this power game. You cannot play it because you'll always be reactive. Like, something happens to you, you'll get angry, you'll react straight away. You won't be strategic. You have to remove a certain level of emotions to play the power game.
You Ollie, you think you can remove your emotions?
I do all the time. I'm like,
I don't think you do, but yeah, I don't think you do.
I do all the time.
I don't think you do.
That's your personal opinion. See,
I
I
know
could
it's my
have reacted it, but that's your personal opinion.
I know it's my personal opinion. Everyone has an opinion, but
Exactly.
I'm saying sometimes you think you're you're managing it, but in actual fact, sometimes it can be perceived as though you're not. And I'm not saying that's a negative thing. Pete, would you agree?
Absolutely.
But you got to understand what the play is. So the play, you got to understand what the play is. That's the
Hey, Ollie, it's coming across strong right now, you know.
Ollie, you see, when I hear that, I think of the mafia. I think of Michael Francine, these types of guys, right? But not showing any emotion. So I think there's definitely levels to this. The question is, do you want to prepare yourself to be that person? Where effectively, maybe there's different ways of doing it.
So the reason why I say emotions, the way the book talks about is every human being has emotion. It's not reacting in a way to your emotions that you cannot control. So let's say a situation happens and you get angry. You get angry might be the correct play, because by you getting angry will show, okay, don't mess with that person, don't cross that line. Don't, like, now what?
That's after episode 4 of Take Flight
Exactly,
podcast.
and it won't happen again. Now, otherwise, you could be someone that gets angry but doesn't know the long game. You get angry and realize, oh, you know what? I need that person in the future, or I need to, like, there's different. Showing emotion is not a problem. Like 50 Cent certain times he's ruthless at some people. People say, oh, that's not controlled. That is controlled. He's making a point so that everyone else knows, okay, don't mess with this person. That is a play. Huh? You got to think about it. Yeah. So,
but I think that's a key point, Ollie, because for me personally, for example, I hate when there's times when if something has happened and I react in an angry or I lash out, and it's something that I try to make a conscious of it to not do. And I think personally, I think that I'm quite good at that, unless you guys also disagree with that point. But it's something that I'm always conscious of, because I feel like if I lose my cool in front of other people, then in that situation, I'm losing that power and I'm giving that power to them. And this is something that I'd like to remain in control of as many situations as I can. And if we're having an exchange, which is an emotionally charged exchange, then I'd still rather not express that frustration, because I think then I lose control of that situation. That's something that I don't like. But building on your point, Olu, sometimes you have to do it at the right time, because sometimes it is important to give that message. I think that's something that I'm trying to personally get better at. But that's what...
and that's what the book sort of goes into, because there's a right time to do that and there's a wrong time to do that. Like if you're at work and you now lose your cool, start getting angry and whatever around your execs or whatever, that's not the right time to show your emotions. You're someone that can't control your emotions. If you're with you're out and about, a stranger comes and says something to you, you reacting might show people, okay, around you, okay, he's not someone to play with. Like he's not someone to. It's just like in the street.
Even in that example, Olu, even in that example, sometimes I think if people randomly in the street would come up and say something to me and they seem really charged up, I think it's more powerful to not react to that.
I agree.
And
it depends.
Just be like,
the reason why it depends. I'll tell you why it depends. Yeah, is I've been in situations where I've been to a club and I've seen someone disrespect someone. Yeah, and the person just sort of ignores it, walks away. 2 minutes later, you see someone else disrespecting that person.
Really?
And like you see in certain environments, obviously it's not all different environments, people take advantage of who they perceive as the weak, as who they perceive as weak. So by you in certain situations standing up for yourself, you're able to then show people, okay, I'm not someone to be played around with.
I think it's all about reading the situation. That might work in certain situations, but deploying what Sherelle said might even be stronger.
It depends,
and that doesn't necessarily mean, and just to maybe
it doesn't mean you're a weak
clarify my
person.
point, and it doesn't necessarily mean if someone's being rude to you, you just are saying to them, "Oh, cheers, mate." But it's more powerful to be like, "Don't kind of talk to me like that," but stay kind of remaining cool about it. I don't mean completely walking away and finishing it, but just to not react to it, and then just have a civilized conversation about something.
but reacting to it doesn't have to be a violent. I think you're taking reaction as an extreme. By not reacting, that's a problem.
Okay, what does the book say about it?
So
let's go back to the book.
So then the next one it goes on to is and then before it goes into sort of the rules, it talks about self-ownership, and it tries to say that everything that you have or that happens in your life is based on your actions in most cases. And I think it brings the power back to you, which a lot of people try to say, okay, life is just life actions and stuff are happening.
No.
A lot of times it's based on actions that we've made. And in this book, in terms of this rules that we haven't followed, which has led to certain situations. So it's like around certain people, they will know Olu as very serious. Or I remember at uni days, P is a perfect example. Some people were like, oh, P is always very serious. But no, P created that image for himself because that also protected him from a lot of BS. That is also an element of having an action, creating a persona or whatever to be able to protect you. That is a way of playing the power game. So let's go into some of the powers or some of the laws of power, so we can sort of discuss it. I won't go into too many, but I'll touch a few. I'll touch on some and a few. The first one, and which a lot of you can probably talk about, is never outshine the master. So what this one is like, do you believe that every one of you's got a master?
Only the man above.
Okay. Anyone else want to chime in on that?
It depends on the situation you're in. But if I think about it,
what you talking about?
The classic one is your boss at work.
What about you, Daniel? What's your point?
Not even that. You got the government, you got the monarchy. They're in positions of authority and power. They're essentially controlling and dictating things for us.
So, Shawal, your response was based on ego because you don't like the terminology of saying, "Oh, I've got a master. I report to someone." Every single person in this world has got a master. You might not want to use the word master. Every single person has got one. Even the president or the prime minister has got a master. You have to answer to someone. Someone is more powerful than you. Yeah? So the book, when it says never outshine your master, is find out whoever is that person with more power than you. Can be your manager or whatever. And be careful not to outshine that person. Because naturally human beings have got insecurities. So you could be in a meeting with your manager and you could be like, oh, I'm going to throw the best presentation. Like my manager's going to chime in and be like, no, that's not 100% correct. It's actually his insecurity is going to feel, okay, is he trying to take my job? Is he trying to make a move?
Which is this is interesting. I've seen examples of this before.
If I've got a presentation to deliver, I'm going to deliver the presentation, bro.
You've probably seen it. I've seen examples of that, P, where you do a piece of work and the people, as Ollie's classifying them as the masters or whoever is above you, they do sometimes throw those things out. And I never thought of it how you thought of it, Ollie, but that is a sign of insecurity now. And this
you learn that one in martial arts. So if you are a lower grade belt and you're fighting a higher grade belt, you're supposed to go and you're doing the commentate. You're supposed to go along with their beat, if that makes sense. So even if, for example, I know I'm better than the person that I'm fighting, they just happen to have a higher belt than me, I can't show off too much or flex or disrespect them in such a way. I kind of have to go along. And one time I did, and someone pulled me to the side and said, "You're supposed to go along with how that person's fighting." So I didn't understand it, but it speaks to that point.
Yeah.
So that's a key one. Is and that's your job whenever you got a master per se is to make that person look good. When you do that, that person will then be able to advance you in your career, put different plays for you, etc. Another one is which I really like is always say less than necessary. So a lot is similar to like don't always show all your cards. Similar to that sort of terminology. Also, you'll find that by saying less, which Daniel doesn't do, you don't.
What do you mean?
You don't fall for the trap of sounding stupid. Have you ever been in certain meetings and someone is waffling on, and then by the fact that they're talking so much, they end up saying something that's completely stupid, and you're like, wait, you should have just stopped at the beginning. No one would have known you're stupid or you don't understand this.
Especially if you're getting audited.
Wait, so you're saying I do that?
Huh?
You say you're saying I do that?
I'm not saying to the full extreme, but I'm saying you can say less.
Olu's sending shots.
These early mornings. Olu, that's what you think, but I say let what you say be the tip of the iceberg of what you know.
Okay.
Actually, do you know what? My personal experience with Dan is I feel like he's the type that actually says less, personally.
P, what do you think?
But maybe you guys have different experiences.
Well, I'm finding it. I need to read the book.
Yeah, it's very interesting.
Right now, I'm sitting there thinking to myself, I don't see myself sitting in a meeting strategizing about, okay, don't only say this piece.
Yeah.
It seems like a lot of brain work that has to go into it, which is fine.
But that's the power game. You have to be strategic about it.
I think what I like to understand when I read the book is the benefits from playing that game. So and also seeing how that plays
Question
out.
out for you. In a meeting when your CEO is there or CFO is there, how much does your CFO talk in a meeting?
Oh, it depends. It varies. I think. Yes, I mean some talk too much because they're still insecure. They're not necessarily firm in their position. And some who, I've in my past experience actually in all of my. No, actually, to be honest, I think they speak a fair amount. But I mean, there's a very few senior executives that basically just chip in or chime in with one or two
I always
words.
find, and in most situations, whoever's got the power in the room in any discussion really or doesn't overly speak. They will chime in. When they speak, everyone listens, everyone gravitates, they move the room. It's similar to the sort of thing where you say that the weakest person in the room is the loudest person, the one that talks the most. And I've seen that in so many situations where I've gone out or whatever situations where you're like, this guy's overly talking, overly hyping, overly doing so much. And you're like, yo, this guy's insecure. It's his insecurity that's making him continuously talk. And people notice that, and that's sort of the power game. I'll talk about one more because I know we're running up on sort of time. Another one is recreate yourself. And I think it really basically says that no matter what you do or who you are, you should always recreate yourself. And it's a saying like, be what you want to be. So don't let society or life dictate who you are, but create who you want to be. Which as another law is like, act like a king, like you're already a king. So by acting like a king, people will start treating you like a king because that's sort of how you act and how you're perceived. So whoever you want to be, and you'll see that people will start reacting to it based on the perception or the character that you've created.
How I interpret that, and I think it's effectively is visualizing who you want to be in the not so distant future, and it's assuming that person today, which you are not already are. So, and I actually had a discussion earlier this week, or let's say I had a therapy session where the lady actually had me step into my future self and have my future self speak to who I am today and what would they say to me. So it's this recreating yourself. I think is a lot to do with visualize who you want to be, and then start dressing, acting, talking like that person today.
Yeah, no, I agree. Like this has got, like I mentioned, 48 different laws. I would definitely recommend it just to understand one, if you're not someone sort of gravitating and wanting power, but understand some of the laws in which people with power actually follow and use. And then now, by reading this book, you're going to start seeing how decisions that people make, and you're going to be like, that person's doing that. That person's doing that. And then you're going to know how to react based on what sort of plays or laws that people are following. It's got stuff like...
Yeah, I think that's key, because actually when I was listening to you talk about the book, I was putting myself in a position where I have to start making these power plays. But actually, you can read the book to understand
what other people are doing
are made effectively on you, and it raises your level of awareness. So it's
got so many different like laws, like your like defend your reputation over anything. Like your reputation is like the most important thing that you have to, which we all know based on work and everything. Whatever people perceive of you is so true. Like never appear to be too perfect. There's just so many different laws that in here that you can either follow or analyze and see how people do it. So
Oli, what do you want to repeat the name and author?
Yeah, so it's the 48 Laws of Power by Robert Greene.
Okay, perfect. I've literally just ordered it now off Amazon as we speak.
Dope.
So is that the end of episode 18? So guys, we hope you enjoyed this week's episode about side hustles and Olu's book review about the 48 Laws of Power. Just wanted to thank you all for listening. If you've made it to the end of the episode, special thank you to you. Again, as we mentioned at the beginning of the episode, when we don't have any marketing budget, we just continue to grow every week because of word of mouth and because of you, our amazing listeners who continue to listen and share with your friends and family and whoever you want to share it with. So please continue to tag us on Instagram at TakeFlightPodcast. And let us know if there's any suggestions, anything that you want us to talk about. Please let us know anytime. We're always listening, always improving, and we really appreciate each and every one of you. So have a good week. God bless, and keep listening to Take Flight Podcast.
Peace. Take care.
Take off.